National Security Council meeting ends with a call on security agencies to be more proactive and halt criminal activities in the country.
Continuous voter registration exercise to commence in June.
We are here to verify that the right thing is being done. Converting those voting points to polling units and relocating them.
Secretary to the Government of the Federation warns public against fraudsters using his name and office for fraudulent activities.
And on Good Morning Nigeria today, we shall discuss the implications of the proposed special legislative seats for women in Nigeria.
In spite of recorded progress made in recent decades on gender issues, gender inequality remains persistent in various aspects of life, with disparities manifesting more in education, politics, and governance, just to mention a few.
Now, Kirian, gender inequality over the years has become more pronounced in developing countries, with boys habitually receiving more attention in education, health, and freedom of association due to social, political, economic, and religious factors.
And despite the Beijing Declaration and the Platform for Action, which advocated balanced political participation and power sharing between women and men in decision-making, it is an obvious fact that women in Nigeria are still poorly represented in decision-making positions, which had adversely affected their ability to influence policies in their favor.
For instance, records show that following the 2019 general elections, women's representation in the House of Reps stood at 5.5%, and in the Senate it was 5.8%. In fact, during that election, only 5 women out of the 73 candidates that ran for the presidential seat.
Now, the statistics for the 2019 general elections also revealed that only 232 women vied for 109 senatorial seats, as against 1,668 men, while 560 women competed with 4,139 men for the 360 seats in the House of Representatives.
Now, this poor representation of women in politics and by extension governance and decision-making is probably what informed the presentation of a bill last month that seeks to create 111 additional special seats for women in the National Assembly. Now, the bill was presented by the Deputy Chief Whip, that's Honorable Nkurika Onyejocha, and that was on the 22nd of last month.
And today on Good Morning Nigeria, we'll be taking a look at that proposition of a special legislative seat for women in Nigeria, its processes and way forward. We'll be joined by a panel of guests to examine issues around the bill. Welcome to Good Morning Nigeria. My name is Kirian Umayo.
And I'm Kingsley Osadolo. I join Kirian to also welcome you to the program. We are live on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority, broadcasting from our Abuja headquarters studios. In the course of the program, we'll have our complimentary segments of newspaper review, business, and others. For now, let's join Musbah Odan Wahab for the highlights of the morning news. Good morning, Musbah.
Very good morning, Kingsley and Kirian. Venice. The National Security Council meeting at the Presidential Villa Abuja ended on Tuesday with a call on all security agencies to be more proactive in halt criminal activities in the country. The crucial meeting, which was summoned by President Muhammadu Buhari, was to find lasting solutions to the persistent challenges of security in parts of the country. The presidency has given more insight into the seriousness of an alert by the Department of State Services (DSS) on sinister moves by misguided elements to wreak havoc on the government's sovereignty and corporate existence of the country. In a statement, the special advisor to the president's media and publicity, Femi Adesina, indicates that evidence abounds that these disruptive elements are now recruiting the leadership of some ethnic groups and politicians around the country to convene some sort of conference where a vote of no confidence would be passed on the president's thoughts, throwing the land into turmoil. The statement adds that Nigerians have opted for democratic rule, in which the only acceptable way to change a democratically elected government is through elections, and that Buhari administration has already been vested with mandate and authority by Nigerians till 2023. Additionally said the presidency pledges to keep the country together even if some unruly favors will be ruffled in the process. And President Muhammadu Buhari has strongly condemned the killing of 11 people in Gwe West local government area of Benue State and the reprisals on innocent people by mobs that blocked roads and unleashed terror and violence. President Buhari also deplores the killing of innocent people in Anambra State by mobs, saying that in both cases, innocent people were killed through no fault of theirs. The president urges leaders of ethnic and religious groups to play their roles constructively in controlling their followers or members in order to support the government's efforts for sustainable peace. While commiserating with the bereaved families and the government and people of Benue and Anambra States, President Buhari commends the police and other law enforcement agencies for their prompt response in averting the escalation of the violence, urging them to put in every effort to apprehend perpetrators of the heinous attacks. INEC Chairman Professor Mahmood Yakubu says the Commission has not made any formal statement on the number of new polling units to be created, as that is still in process. Professor Yakubu made this known while inspecting some proposed areas marked for the exercise in the Federal Capital Territory and Nasarawa states.
We are here to verify that the right thing is being done, converting those voting points to polling units and relocating them as per the Commission's guidelines. Our hope is that we will not see this kind of congestion again in future elections.
Miogidi reports that INEC is, however, at its final stage to announce the new polling units as the resumption of continuous voters registration exercise is slated for June. The Secretary to the Government of the Federation, Boss Mustafa, has urged the public to beware of fraudsters who use his name and office to defraud unsuspecting Nigerians. In a statement, the SGF says his attention has been drawn to the activities of fraudsters circulating false information on social media through emails, text messages, and other outlets, urging members of the public to submit their curriculum vitae at a fee to a non-existing desk at the Office of the Secretary to the Government of the Federation to facilitate their selection for various federal government appointments. The SGF has also observed with dismay that such fraudsters have also resorted to sending fake advertisements for supply of some medical diagnostic equipment to his office. The public is by this notice advised to disregard such information, as the Office of the Secretary to the Government of the Federation has no such mandate and has never requested for such information or put up such advertisements. The SGF says the originator of such fraudulent request to desist forthwith from using his office to fleece unsuspecting members of the public or be prepared to face the wrath of the law. And the federal government says it has no plan to privatize the river basin development authorities in the country, as it is being speculated in some quarters. Water Resources Minister Suleiman Adamu cleared the air of a business improvement training for the partial commercialization and introduction of public-private partnership in some selected projects of the pilot river basin development authorities.
Partial commercialization of the river basin development authorities is therefore a golden opportunity to contribute to the advancement of the reform agenda of the Buhari administration through integrated river basin management as a vehicle for enhancing food security, job and wealth creation as encapsulated in the economic recovery and growth plan of the government.
And 34 new cases of COVID-19 have been recorded in Nigeria as at 4th of May 2021. With this new data, Enugu recorded 19 new cases, Lagos 13, while the FCT and Kaduna State recorded 1 new case each. The total number of confirmed cases in Nigeria is now put at 165,215, and 155,371 persons have been treated and discharged, while death toll is now put at 2,063. Concludes the morning news. Good morning, Nigeria. We'll continue with Kingsley and Kieran. After this break, have a wonderful day.
As Oni of Ife, as someone who cares about the well-being and safety of our people, it's time for each and every one of us to realize that COVID-19 is real and it has killed millions of people around the world. Scientists have developed this vaccine. The vaccine is safe for everyone and it contains no microchip, nor can it alter our DNA. However, we must continue to stay safe and stay clean, wear face masks, clean our hands on a regular basis, and try as much as possible to avoid a very large crowd and gathering. For those who choose to be vaccinated, it will go a long way in protecting yourself and your loved ones from COVID-19.
Here today, gone tomorrow. Cause you volatile like the water. And you promise what you don't know. Sometimes it's right and then it's so wrong. Them go do like say them wise. Will promise you the world. Brother, all now worship. Up all on no be open eye. I said no be water. Like you be letter.
The Smartphone Network.
The Minister of Communications and Digital Economy, Dr. Isa Ali Ibrahim Pantami, FNCS, FBCS, FIIM cordially invites stakeholders from both public and private sector to the hybrid fiscal and virtual launching of the National Policy for the Promotion of Indigenous Content in the Nigeria Telecommunications Sector and revised National Digital Identity Policy for SIM card registration. In line with the National Digital Economy Policy and Strategy, NDEPS, the policy is meant to actualize the President Muhammadu Buhari's campaign promises. The launching will be performed by the special guest of honor, the President and Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, President Muhammadu Buhari, GCFR. Date Thursday, the 6th of May 2021. Time 10 a.m. Venue Presidential Villa, State House, Abuja, and virtual platforms. Note: invited guests are advised to adhere strictly to all COVID-19 protocols. Ministry of Communications and Digital Economy, leveraging digital technologies for national economic development.
It's the dawn of a new era on NTA's flagship program, the Sports Parliament, revitalized with lots of varieties, including feedback responses from viewers. Sports Parliament, the weekly sports show that exposes all the intrigues in the Nigerian sports sector and projects an agenda on the way forward for Nigerian sports. On NTA every Thursday at 10:30 p.m., running for 1 whole hour, discussing sports. The parliamentarians are more committed than ever to enlighten the viewers as the Sports Parliament takes it to a whole new level on the floor of the House. Keep a date with the Sports Parliament as motions are moved every Thursday on the floor of the House. Mr. Speaker, with his gavel to harmonize sports resolutions. The House have it.
Sheffield United only have their pride to play for when Crystal Palace visit this Saturday. On the Premier League Live is Sheffield United versus Crystal Palace, showing on the network service of the NTA from 2:30 p.m. The Premier League Live is brought to you by Baba Ijebu in association with Gold.com.
Well, we thank you for staying with us on Good Morning Nigeria. Now let's talk business. Federal government's 50 billion naira export expansion facility program to increase foreign exchange earnings. Let's hear more from Kunle Adeye.
After the launch of the 50 billion naira export expansion facility program by the federal government to stimulate the entire economic system, the Nigeria Export Promotion Council, one of the agencies actively involved in the execution of the project, has revealed that the federal government has committed a lot into the program. Executive Secretary, Nigeria Export Promotion Council, Segun Awolowo, said the scheme is another way of mitigating the effects of COVID-19 on non-oil export businesses. He said the federal government is on course to fully achieve its quest of diversifying the economy.
Part of what we've started now is a portal because we're using technology. We're going to use technology to drive the whole program. So we have a grant management portal that is on now, and we recently advertised for the Export Development Fund for MSMEs, SMEs to register on that, which that has been concluded, and then it's done. Then people start getting their, I call it, their Buhari alert.
He urged Nigerian manufacturers to take advantage of the program in order to stay competitive in the African Continental Free Trade Area. And to the details of Tuesday's tradings on the floor of the exchange. With business news, I'm Kunle Adeye.
Many thanks, Kunle Adeye, for the business package. Coming up next now is Newspaper Review.
Now let's welcome Bayo Tebi, our reviewer. Bayo, it's good to see you again today.
Thank you, Kirian. Good morning. Good morning, Kinsley.
All right, Bayo, good to see you.
Good morning, Nigeria. Thank you.
All right. Kirian?
All right, now the Nation newspaper. Above the nameplate of the Nation newspaper, anxiety over abducted students as deadline expires. Details on page 4. Herders evicted from Ondo Forest, Kwara village. It's on page 5 of the Nation newspaper. Fire raises RCCG primary school in Damaturu. That story is on page 27. And Army got 1.08 trillion naira in 28 months, says the minister. That's the Minister of Finance. Details on page 5. Now, the lead story on the Nation this morning is this. Presidency, we have uncovered plot to bring down Buhari with 3 riders, DHQ, that's the defense headquarters, warns military chiefs, politicians against treason. Khan rejects accusation of religious leaders' involvement. Islamic Council seeks probe. All right, that's it. That's it from here. I think the details of that story can be found on page 4 of the Nation newspaper. Yeah.
Okay, we also have the window page of the Punch, and some of the headlines that Kieran read, you also find them on the page. Above the name flag, insecurity worsening despite 10.02 trillion naira 6-year security vote. Insecurity worsening despite 10.02 trillion naira 6-year security vote. And this is according to budget. It is on page 18. Ahmed, that's Minister of Finance, appears before Senate, says Army got 1 trillion naira in 2 years. Page 9. CBN should pay 100 million naira Greenfield students ransom before it's too late. That's according to Sheikh Gumi, page 2. Pension operators seek alternative investments as assets decline. This story says ACF Ohaneze and PDP slam Buhari as presidency alleges coup plot. You have details of that story also on page 2. And then the photographs there on the front page get a caption, parents of 29 college students still in kidnappers' den, that is in Kaduna, protests at the National Assembly. The photographs there. Gunmen kidnap herdsman leader in Kogi, whereabouts unknown. Subscribers insist on Patamin's resignation despite NIN SIM linkage extension. Fire raises Yobe Redeemed School. Church says inferno not ordinary. Code of Conduct Chair gets Senate's 2-week ultimatum to defend assault allegation. Kano Hisba sacks official found in hotel room with housewife. Reps probe ticket racketeering on Abuja Kaduna train route. Mayo.
Thank you, Kingsley. Let's start with the cheering news. One of the 17 students of the Greenfield University is being reported to have been released to his mother. Daily Trust gathered that the mother most likely paid some ransom to the bandits. It will be recalled that the bandits' leader, identified as Sani Idris Jalingo, otherwise known as Baleri, had demanded 100 million ransom and 10 Honda motorcycles, otherwise known as Boko Haram, to be before he will release the 17 students. He had threatened to murder the students if his terms were not met. Parents of the 16 students still in the captivity of the bandits have appealed to government and Nigerians to please come to their aid. Meanwhile, in another development, parents of the 29 students of the Federal College of Forestry Mechanization, Afaka, Kaduna, yesterday thronged the National Assembly to protest and take their demands for the rescue of their awards to the National Assembly. The protesters emphasize that their awards and children have been in captivity now for 55 days. 39 students were abducted March 11th. 10 of them were released in 2 batches of 5. Honorable Babajimi Benson briefed the speaker after meeting the protesters at the National Assembly. The parents say they feel abandoned to their plight as some of them have not eaten for days. They came dressed in black mourning and they say that they now have hope only with the National Assembly. The Speaker of the House of Representatives, Femi Gbagabia-Mila, indicated that the National Assembly, especially the House of Representatives, will make contact with relevant authorities in Kaduna State and how to deal with the matter. Meanwhile, the Minister of Information and Culture says that government is very concerned about the kidnap of students that is going on around the country. He stressed that both the federal and Kaduna State government are working around the clock to ensure that the students are released. There's a heightened alert raised by the special advisor to the president, Mr. Femi Adesina. He says some disgruntled religious and past political leaders were pursuing moves to compel a forceful and undemocratic change of leadership in Nigeria. Mr. Femi Adesina says alleged plotters are now recruiting leaders of some ethnic groups and politicians with the intention to convene some sort of conference. He said, while a vote of no confidence will be passed on President Muhammadu Buhari, thereby causing crisis in the country, the statement described the move as illegal and also troublesome, treasonable, stressing that the Buhari administration will keep Nigeria together no matter whose ox is called. Mr. Adesina cites the alert provided last weekend by the State Department and described the actions as and information as unimpeachable evidence. And he also mentioned the fact that these persons are working in cohort with external forces, but the presidency, with the mandate which lasts until 2023 to keep Nigeria, has a mandate to keep Nigeria together, even if some unlawful feathers will have to be unruffled. The People's Democratic Party also responded and saying that the administration of the president is hounded by the shadows and has resorted to blackmail. In a statement by the media spokesman for the party, Kola Ologbondiyan, he says the presidency should take charge of securing the nation rather than engaging in what he described as frivolous allegations. He says that the PDP believes that the statement is made because of heightened political tension ahead of 2023. Meanwhile, at the National Assembly, the minority caucus at the National Assembly has threatened on Tuesday to use legislative powers to move against the president by invoking his constitutional powers. Senate Minority Leader Inaya Baribe said at a press briefing that the administration has failed to guarantee security, the primary purpose of government. He said the People's Democratic Party, he didn't say the minority parties in the House, the People's Democratic Party strongly condemned that from 2015 to date, rather than resolve security situation, the federal government has broadened them. There are 469 legislators in the National Assembly, 109 senators, 30 House of Reps. The Senate has 63 APC members and 45 PDP members. At the House of Representatives, there are 360, 190 APC, PDP 151, other parties 19. There are 23 others who are awaiting supplementary election. And when they say minority caucus, you tend to think that it's all the other minority parties, but apparently it is only the People's Democratic Party. But meanwhile, the Minister of Information and Culture, Lai Mohammed, is saying that the PDP is playing politics with security by alleging kidnapping and banditry are not being brought to justice. The minister says that it is shocking that the People's Democratic Party, after ruling the nation for 16 years, does not know that kidnapping and banditry are not federal offenses. He clarified that for terrorism, being a federal offense, the federal government has successfully prosecuted Boko Haram members at Kainji, and the exercise is continuing. He said instead of playing ostrich and playing politics, the People's Democratic Party should call on the states under their control to ensure that rigorous prosecution of arrested kidnappers and bandits are carried out. Mr. Lai Mohammed says, we acknowledge that there is a challenge with security and the nation, and we are doing everything possible to tackle them. Lest we forget, COVID-19 is still with us. Yesterday, there were 34 new cases in 3 states and the Federal Capital Territory. Enugu shot into the lead, beating Lagos with 19 cases. Lagos had 13. Kaduna FCT had 1 each. The total so far is 165,215. The good news is that last week we reported that in 12 days, we were lucky to have just only 1 death. And since then, we've had only 1 other single death, bringing our total now to 2,063. So we are beginning to overcome COVID-19, but we must continue to be very alert with non-pharmaceutical protocols.
Yes. You know, thank you, Bayo. We will see you again tomorrow.
Thank you.
Yeah, just before Bayo leaves, the issue relating to the prosecution of offenses, which the information minister clarified, That clarification is very important. Terrorism is, as you said, is a federal offense, and therefore the federal government will prosecute offenders on the basis of a prima facie case being established that the defendants had breached provisions of the Terrorism Act. Some states have passed anti-kidnapping laws, sometimes prescribing the death penalty for persons who are caught. Banditry, of course, is just an elevated form of robbery, violent robbery, armed robbery, and so on and so forth. So the question is actually an important one. Is it that the cases are not being reported by the media? If the state governments, that's to say the Attorney General of the state or the DPP, is prosecuting persons already arrested for those offenses, then why are we not hearing about the cases? Or is there just tardiness in going ahead with the prosecution? And part of the reason that some persons will say is that this is the oxygen that criminals get when they feel that they cannot be brought under the law. That's right. There's no deterrent.
The most important thing here is how many of them are being arrested. That's the most important thing. How many bandits have been arrested? How many kidnappers have been arrested across the nation?
Well, that's first the function of the security agencies.
First of all.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes. And then, of course, you develop your case file.
And of course, the agencies are run by the federal government and not by the state in the first place.
I think the grievous threat we are facing with security requires critical measures for it. For instance, the National Assembly now is now looking at legislation by way of taking positive steps. The judiciary should also step up action. If possible, create special courts to treat this, because any desperate case requires desperate solutions.
That's right. That's to say that the criminal justice system, all the actors.
For me, this is a serious conundrum, and we have to sort it out, as a nation. Bayo, once again, we would like to thank you.
Thank you too.
For your analysis today. See you again tomorrow. Yes, you're still watching Good Morning Nigeria, broadcast live on the network service of the NTA. We are looking at a very important issue here that concerns women, their roles in governance, their participation in politics, and what have you. So stay back. We will return very shortly.
Dialogue, empathy, love, and unity. These are vital components of nation building.
For all to be well, we appeal that we should refrain from volatile, provocative, inciting messages and language.
Let's build and not destroy.
Shola, come and help me. You need to learn.
But I'm more interested in drawing.
How are you going to be part of the business if you don't learn?
You just don't understand.
Morning. Anyone for some Lipton?
The rich taste of Lipton awakens body and mind.
Let me have a look at your drawings. Son, these designs are amazing.
Lipton Yellow Label Tea. Awaken to what really matters.
He's falling sick so frequently, either fever or stomachache. I keep him away from junk food.
He also feeds me apples. She says an apple a day keeps...
If you want to keep germs away, then also wash your hands regularly with Dettol soap.
Meaning?
If it's a soap, why not Dettol soap? Germs and disease spread through the hand also. For this, use Dettol soap. Dettol protects from up to 100 illness-causing germs. Dettol soap is endorsed by the Nigerian Medical Association. Be Dettol sure.
My name is Nancy Oyedia Orom. I'm AIT correspondent. I've been covering the Presidential Task Force on COVID-19 the last 1 year. I just took the jab, the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine, and it was seamless. And I was opportune to take these vaccines with the SGF, the ministers. So I want to use this medium as a journalist for someone who has experienced COVID in the last 1 year. I want to implore media houses, broadcast industries. Let's join hands together to propagate the good information out there for people to believe in these vaccines. That's the only way we can have health immunity and also achieve the projection and target of Nigeria come 2022. Well, I must implore all Nigerians to go out there, register on the Primary Healthcare Development Agency website. These vaccines are free for all Nigerians. Go to the website, register. It is free for you and I.
Life is a game. We are cool. We are trendy. Energy moves us. Sports is our game, our oxygen. Because with the round leather, we ball, we hustle. All over the land, north and south, we are united in the positive glory. We are encapsulated by HIFL. We live for the game. It's game time. Showing on NTA Network.
Sheffield United only have their pride to play for when Crystal Palace visit this Saturday. On the Premier League Live is Sheffield United versus Crystal Palace, showing on the network service of the NTA from 2:30 p.m. The Premier League Live is brought to you by Baba Ijebu in association with Gold.com.
All right, and to begin our conversation this morning, which is on special legislative seats for women in Nigeria, let's first of all join Ekene Dulue for a background report.
Statistics suggest that women constitute about 49% of Nigeria's population. Yet, participation of women in politics has been quite low since the inception of Nigeria's democracy. Over the years, concerted efforts have been made by government and non-governmental organizations to increase the level of participation of women in politics in line with the declaration made at the Fourth World Conference on Women in Beijing, which advocated 30% affirmative action. The extant national gender policy in Nigeria took it a notch higher by recommending 35% affirmative action while seeking more inclusive representation of women with at least 35% of both appointments and elective positions. These efforts have so far yielded little results as women participation in politics is still far from the desired numbers. In the 9th National Assembly, there are only 7 women in the Senate out of 109 senators, while the House of Representatives has only 13 women out of 360 members. A recent bill in the House of Representatives, which proposes creation of additional seats to be filled by only women in the National Assembly, is the latest effort aimed at increasing female representation. This bill, seeking to alter the 1999 Constitution to create additional special seats for women in the federal and state legislative houses, passed second reading at the House of Representatives plenary session on Wednesday, 28 April 2021. The bill proposes the creation of additional 37 Senate seats, specifically for women, 1 from each state of the Federation and the FCT. It also proposes the creation of 2 additional seats from each of the 36 states of the Federation and FCT for the House of Representatives, with additional creation of 1 seat from each senatorial district of the 36 states of the Federation to be contested for solely by a woman. This establishes 3 additional state House of Assembly seats, 1 from each of the senatorial districts in the state. The provision is, however, a temporary special measure which will come up for review after 4 election cycles of 16 years. The bill would create a new narrative on the question of female inclusion in Nigeria's politics. What are the issues behind low participation of women in politics? What does the new bill portend for Nigerian women? These and more are the issues to be x-rayed on this edition of Good Morning Nigeria.
Many thanks, Ekene Undulwe, for that backgrounder. With us in the studios now to discuss this issue, would like to welcome the Honorable Minister of Women Affairs, Her Excellency Dame Pauline Tallen. Pleasure to have you again on Good Morning Nigeria.
Thank you. Good morning.
Also here with us in the studios, would like to welcome the Executive Director of Order Paper Nigeria, Mr. Oke Epia. Okay, delighted to have you on Good Morning Nigeria.
Thank you. Good morning.
All right. The Programs Director of Yaga Africa, Cynthia Mbamalo, is also here with us in the studios. Cynthia, pleasure to have you this morning.
Good morning, Nigeria.
Okay.
Yeah, ladies and gentlemen, you are indeed welcome to the program. We are actually expecting to have in the program the honorable member who actually proposed this special legislative bill. We're hoping that she's going to join us in the course of the program, because of course he has to answer so many questions regarding what informed, the bill in the first place. But nevertheless, we have a very experienced lady politician here who has held so many positions of authority in the person of the Minister of Women Affairs, Dame Pauline Tallen. Yes. Okay, ma'am, looking at the bill in the first place, I'm sure you're in support of that bill. What informed your decision to support the bill? And if our viewers would like to know how this bill can work, considering the fact that we're not running a one-party system.
Thank you very much. I want to start by saying fully that I fully support this bill, 100%. And I want to commend Honorable Kiruka for proposing that bill, and also to commend the Speaker and all members of the National Assembly for supporting this bill thus far. And I pray that they will pass it up to the final reading. It is clear that there's so much fear and agitation when we talk about quota system, when we complain about increasing the number of women in the National Assembly. Because when you bring up the matter, the members of the National Assembly feel agitated. They feel, who do you want to unseat? And the safest way, the Honorable Member analyzed this by proposing this additional seat. It is not strange. Quota system happens all over the world. Special concessions are given to women. This is not the first time it's happening. Most of the developed countries, particularly in the African sub-region, Rwanda did it, Senegal did it, Kenya, South Africa, most of the African countries. And it is clear that when we have more women in the national assemblies, the better for it for the nation, because better laws will be passed. Women's participation is key to national development, because women are mothers, they know where it pinches the family. And for what the members of the National Assembly have done so far, I want to sincerely commend them. We're praying that this bill will pass final reading in the interest of the nation, because it is a big shame for Nigeria, being the father figure in the African continent. We call ourselves the giant of Africa, and yet we are the least represented at both national and state assemblies. We need to lead by example. We need to show clearly that we are indeed the giant of Africa. So having this bill pass will make a big difference in the development of our dear country, because where we have more women participating, you can see the development that is growing fast in countries where we have more women, or in countries where women are at the helm of leadership. It speaks clearly. And Nigeria should not be an exception.
All right, thank you very much, Dame Pauline Talent. We'll come back to you in the course of the conversation. Cynthia Mbamalo of Yaga Africa, from your point of view, is there at this time a crying need for increased participation of women in Nigerian legislature? And if so, what is the rationale for this? Is it just mere participation or to improve the quality of legislative transactions?
Yeah, thank you and good morning once again. I think it's at the core of democracy itself. So it's not just about mere participation, it's a question of, are we ready to build a democratic, developed society? Because no country can develop if half of its population are not part of the decision-making process. It's like a bird trying to fly with one wing. I don't know how far the bird can go. And that is why we're still struggling in Nigeria. So this proposed bill, what it seeks to do basically is to solve the challenge of low representation of women. The Honorable Minister has said it at the federal and state level. It's worrisome that in Nigeria, in 2021, if you look at the 2019 elections that has brought us to where we are currently, at the State Assembly, out of 991 state constituencies, only 44 are women. In the whole of Northwest, only Kaduna has one woman in the State Assembly, and that is 7 states in the north, meaning that states like Kano with 40 state legislators have no woman. Now, that is just state level. If you come to the national, it's also poor. If you go to appointment, it is poor. So now the focus on the conversation around creating additional seats is one. It became necessary at this point to respond to the need to take legislative action to open up the space to increase women representation at the legislative arm of government. Why is this important? The legislature is the hub of democracy. That is where laws are made. That is where oversight functions are performed. That is where representation of the people is done in its purest form. Now, what we have currently is a National Assembly that even in lawmaking, we do not even see gender-sensitive laws being churned out because we have few voices of women at the national level. So even, for instance, as simple as the response to sexual and gender-based violence, we expect, for instance, the Ministry of Women Affairs or the minister to perform magic. But if we do not have legislative support to back sufficient funding to address issues of sexual and gender-based violence, for instance, then the minister would just be acting and will be fighting a battle that only her is waging the war. So we also need to start thinking that beyond participation, that for the quality of governance, for the quality of leadership, we need women represented in government so that when we talk about development, we're looking at development from a gender-sensitive lens that addresses the needs of men, women, girls, and boys. It is also worrisome that in a country like Nigeria, over almost 49%, 49.something% are women of our population. However, in the decision-making process, you see is male-dominated. So beyond just representation, beyond quality of governance, is also about image of the society. So when people look at government, it's almost like Nigeria is made up of men and no women, because the government should reflect the society. But what we have is a government that is not truly reflecting the beauty of our society, which is made up of powerful, beautiful, intelligent, capable women and men. And we need to see that reflected in government. So honestly, this bill, what it seeks to do is to solve this challenge first of low representation. Let us open up the space through legislative action, amend the constitution, create additional seats. Since all our efforts in previous assemblies for affirmative action, they have been failing. So let us try this and let us see how it works. By the time we solve this, we'll begin to see governance in its purest form. We begin to see the quality of governance improving to meet the needs of every citizen in Nigeria.
Yes, I like the energy and the passion, with which you you delivered that comment. Of course, remember that we are in Africa. We're also running a democratic process. And perhaps in the course of this program, we'll be able to find out from you the methodology for doing this, because we have many parties, and we have to understand how it can be the mechanics, of doing that. So let's bring in Okewapia here. Okay, should there be a special consideration for increased women representation at the National Assembly and, of course, the State House of Assembly?
Thank you. I would say yes, but I'm careful to also say that we should bear in mind that this is not the silver bullet to address issues of gender parity in governance. I say this because we run the risk of getting really excited about this bill and all the promises that it holds. I'm beginning to see this as a one or cure or two for all of the issues around gender and governance in this country. I support this bill because for 22 years of the Fourth Republic, we've had only 116 women in the House of Representatives. That's a very poor number, you would agree with me. We've seen an oscillation, in the numbers from 1999 to the current 9th National Assembly, high and lows. We have never had more than 26 women in the House of Representatives at any point in time. I think that's in the 8th Assembly. Now we have 12 of them or thereabouts. In the Senate, we've had from 4 in 1999 women to the current 7. We had 8 elected. We lost 1 of them. So we have 7 women. So clearly, there is need to have some kind of instrument to address this disparity. But we must be careful, I insist, because there are issues around why we are where we are. It's not about the law. We have laws. We always say this. We have sufficient laws. Maybe not sufficient, but we have a substantial number of laws and legislation that can address our issues in this country. What's the issue? Really, implementation. Why are judicial workers on strike? Why do we have legislators at the state level, the legislature at the state level without financial autonomy? Is it because that law has not been passed? You get what I mean? This law has been passed. It has been assented to. There's even an executive order to that effect. But the workers are on strike. So it is the mentality. It is the context. It is the socio-political ideology or context within the country, in different parts of the country. We must see this as an opportunity to address this issue holistically. Otherwise, we'll run away with the excitement, probably align globally with what it is, gender parity movement, and because it is politically correct to do so, many people will join the fray. I observed that a number of reps signed and endorsed that bill alongside the sponsor, the lead sponsor, this, including the speaker, about 80 of them. Yeah, it's a great thing to do. It is populist. But what are the main issues? What is militating? What are those issues militating against participation of women in politics? And it is beyond participation. What is the quality of representation that we should also expect? The women who are currently in parliament, what kind of representation do they offer us? With due respect, and I commend that they are in parliament and doing some great work. But you see, when you are canvassing the point, you also need to take all of this into. We did our assessment at other paper. The first year of the 9th National Assembly, 12 of the women, 3 of them had no bills, not a single bill, in 1 year. So you look at the point is, okay, you legislate it into a law, and then what kind of people get elected? It becomes, okay, quota. We all know the issues around quota in this country. Okay, we get everybody just because there is a slot to be filled, just anybody? So the question you asked earlier is what I'm also trying to refer to. Yes, the issue of participation, but then quality of participation. So I just wanted to raise these general issues, that this is a commendable piece of proposed legislation. But we should not lose the moment that it offers us to address key issues around gender inclusion and gender sensitivity in this country.
Okay, thank you very much for your opening salvo. Let's bring in again Dame Pauline Tallen. You were Deputy Governor of Plateau State, and of course you've also now been a minister of the Federal Republic. Our politics, some would argue, is governed essentially still by patriarchy. And that's why, on its appearance and in substance, it's male-dominated. And some persons have also argued that, yes, the examples you cited earlier on the African continent, Senegal, Rwanda, and in some instances, Tanzania and South Africa, we have seen increased participation of women in politics. But that some of the older democracies that we cite often excitedly are still battling with issues around patriarchy. Until January this year, the United States never had a woman as vice president. And it's been argued that one of the reasons why Hillary Clinton lost to Donald Trump was because the U.S. wasn't ready for a female president. Until 1979, one of the oldest democracies, Britain, never had a woman as prime minister. So, from your participation, practical experience in politics, is it something that we can cure by way of legislation to say, look, the cultural and social practices that we have around women participation in politics, we can leapfrog all of this and suddenly we say, all right, get 111 women, say, into the National Assembly?
Thank you very much. Well, thank God, the examples you've shown, thank God America has realized that they are now ready with a female vice president. And it is happening all over the world. It is clear that any country that lacks a good representation of women, development is slow. Take, for example, even the management of COVID-19. It is clear countries that are led by women perform better. The statistics are clear. And we cannot keep running away from the fact that women have a special role and they have that God-given skill to manage issues and to see things differently from the way men see it. Who nurtured all the leaders? It's a woman. If she rocks the cradle, what stops her from ruling the world? So we should stop talking about, oh, Nigeria is not yet ready, this and that. We have more than qualified women. These few examples that you've made sounds very strange that 3 members never proposed a bill. But I want to tell you that I am proud of all the members that are in the female members that are in the National Assembly. They are making us proud, but their voice cannot be heard because they are like a drop of water in the sea compared to the total number. And we cannot make any progress if we don't change the narratives. And the time is now, because the world over, the United Nations is frowning at any country that refuses to have gender equality. Gender equality is not just a woman's right, it is a human right. And we have to allow this participation, or else we will keep going round and round. Women, I know, politics, you can't play politics without money. Money is key. And the men have always been there, and they have more opportunity to the finances. Women have never had that privilege of the number compared to the men. And I want to say it emphatically clear that women have better and key roles to play if we have the number that can compete with the men. The men uses women, and they use women against their fellow women. Why? Because of poverty. Any woman that allows a man to use her against her fellow woman is simply because education is one, and poverty is another issue. And that's why we're talking about the education of the girl child. If a woman is well educated, she will know her rights and she will then stand to defend it at all times. So this is an issue that Nigeria has to address it now, or else we will keep going round and round. The time is now to make a difference.
Well, I just hope that women who are interested in politics, should borrow a lead from you, considering your vast experience in politics. People like you were not given any special consideration, but you somehow found your way, into politics, and you've been there for a while. Deputy Governor, you were one time Minister of Science and Technology. Now you are Minister of Women Affairs. So that shows that women are indeed capable. But you have to now, perhaps in the course of the show, give us an idea of what other women should do, to get to where you are today. Let's go back to Cynthia once more. Cynthia, okay, talked about quality of representation and participation. We have so many intelligent women in Nigeria, people like you, but I'm not sure you would like to go into politics because of the rigorous nature of politics in Nigeria. But they're speaking so well about women participation. Now, looking at politics as a rigorous process, from nomination, you have to campaign for nomination and then vie for election. And one wonders the process this will take to bring the number of women we desire to be in a National Assembly based on the nature of politics itself. One, finance. Dame talked about poverty and what have you. So looking at Nigeria as a nation, do you think that we have such number of women who have the capacity in terms of finance, the capacity in terms of intelligence that will give us a quality representation that you spoke about? Is it a possibility? Because one is easy to say, look, we want a certain number of women to participate. Another is the process of getting them there.
Yes, that's an interesting question. And I mean, this is a country that produced the first woman to head, from Africa, to head the World Trade Organization. This is a country of Dr. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala. And we've had other great women performing well within Nigeria and beyond Nigeria. So honestly, our challenge is not availability of women with the requisite capacities and competencies. That is not our problem. The problem is the system, is our political structure. So you need to look at the history of our political system. And I would just piggyback a bit on the comments by Okeani said, 3 of the 12, actually 3 of the 13 in the House of Representatives had not sponsored the bill. And I'm like, well, that is showing that about 10 of the women actually did sponsor bills. How many male legislators have not sponsored bills? I think whenever we have conversation around women, we minimize and undermine the quality of conversation by making suggestions that insinuate that women that are in government are not performing, but that is wrong. I think we should look at it from a broad perspective. Let's stop assessing women strictly assessing them with assessment tools that we don't use to assess men. No one is saying, imagine if Nigerians say, after all, men have been leading us for how many years since independence and see where we are. What are we doing with men? We need to get men out of office. Imagine if that was our argument. Because honestly, our system has been led by men for years. We are still struggling. What is this showing? That it's not necessarily about sex. It's about quality of leadership. So when we make our conversations, when we have conversations around women representation, let us stop saying, oh, one woman did this when she was in office. No, that is an unfair assessment. Let us open up the conversation and make it broad. And I bring it down to the political process. We have women contesting elections. In 2019, over 3,000 women contested elections. But out of that number, barely 67 won the elections. Over 3,000 women contested nationally. So it's not that women are not contesting. And not just that. So from the point of aspiration, let us go to the political party process, which is where there's a problem. But while I'm having this conversation, I also want us to also realize that the law itself, what it does is to address a problem first. it's to make it mandatory for parties to know that, hey, if you don't field women, these seats need to be occupied by women. If we don't field women, the National Assembly would not be constitutional because these seats are yet to be filled by women. So it makes it mandatory for parties to realize that now we need to take conscious effort to include women, not special favors. Women are not asking for favors or privileges. No, we're just asking for an equal and fair playing ground. So why is the party process a challenge? Look at the party primaries.
Action is a privilege.
Affirmative action is a positive measure introduced to address historic discrimination, not a privilege. It's the same thing as racial conversation around racial discrimination. You're not asking for privilege. You are saying that we're running a race, but these contestants running this race, one of them has been held by chains. And you expect this contestant running with the fellow contestant that had no chains to perform the same way. We're saying no, because of these chains this contestant have, can we ensure that this contestant, these chains are removed so that they can both run on equal footing on the track? So what are we saying? That women have had historic discrimination that have excluded us from the process, both traditional beliefs, religious beliefs, and what have you, and our system of patriarchy. So even in education, you see there are more men that are educated than men. But that does not mean that women are not performing well in education, even given the opportunities. So because of these challenges, affirmative action is introduced to address a historic discrimination for a period of time. If you look at this bill, the proposal is not to end ad infinitum. It's asking for a 16 years review. So after 16 years, for electoral cycle, it will be reviewed to see, have we had an increase? Is there a reduction? What more can we do? Because the system has not been fair to women. From primaries alone, cost of nomination is one major thing. We know that there's a bigger disadvantage for women when it comes to access of office, access of candidate nomination. We have exorbitant fees. We have primaries set in a way that puts women at a discrimination. We have women who experience sexual violence in party primaries that men do not experience.
I want to let Cynthia, sorry,
I feel we should have this conversation broadly.
Sorry for interjecting. You say that over 3,000 women contested election.
Yes.
Now, that means they've been given an opportunity to contest election. Now, why didn't they win? Why didn't they win election? And in fact, women most times vote against women. So how sensitized are these women that we're talking about?
Women contesting is not about only women voting. We're not talking about gender from a women issue only. Gender is a national issue. And yes, over 3,000 women did contest the elections as candidates, but which parties were feeling that? So you also need to look at the party system. Remember that in a multi-party democracy, there's a tendency for dominance of two parties. And what we have currently is actually a dominance of two parties. And so within these two parties, what are the access for women within these parties? It's the same thing you talk about youth political participation. We had an increase in young people contesting, but yet, which parties were fielding that? So you need to look at this from that context. But if these parties do not have the mandate to support women candidates, and it's difficult for them to contest. So simply, I will give an example of the ANC in South Africa. ANC has a parity proposals that when they contest, they support men and women. They field equal numbers of male and female candidates. That is why when the ANC wins the election as a ruling party, it increases the number of women in their parliament. But we don't have that here. So it's not that women are allowed to contest or that women are not voting women. No. It's that the parties themselves, if the parties are not supporting women, go and talk to the women that have won elections and they will share their experiences with you. Even the men that have contested with them are surprised at some of those the experiences that they share. How many men, when they want to contest for elections, are brought to a meeting with fellow candidates and they are questioned and asked, how many children do you have? How are you feeding your wife in the house? How are you taking care of your family? No man is asked that question, but we have women. A woman was sharing an experience in the Northwest. She was contested. She was brought in the middle with fellow candidates and they spoke to her degradingly. Her qualification did not matter. Her exposure did not matter. All they were asking of, who is your father? Who is your husband? How many children do you have? No one was asking, what is the quality you have? So already, psychologically, there were hindrances that affect women emergence. So when I say there's a problem, there is a problem that within our structure, within the party system, that legislative action can help ameliorate.
Yeah, Cynthia, well, thanks. That last point you made, and indeed all the points that you earlier articulated, that legislation might help ameliorate some of these things. I was interested in some of the data you read out with regard to the presence of women in legislatures, say, in the northwest zone of the country. You can also extrapolate that to other parts of the country. Kano, 40, no woman. Kaduna, only one, and elsewhere. And I asked the question earlier, if we have the headwinds of culture and social practices still very dominant in our politics, how do you deal with this? Is legislation then going to be a silver bullet, just as, okay, Pierre had indicated in terms of caution, of assuming that this will be a magic wand?
It's not a silver bullet, honestly. Like I said, it's a step. What the legislative action does is it guides the process. It helps us begin the process of addressing the challenge of low women representation. Even for countries that introduced them, it took them years to have an increase in number of women. The countries we have mentioned, aside Rwanda, even Senegal, that has parity law, is parity 50-50. They haven't achieved that yet. It's a process. Why? Because of the patriarchal system. So what the legislative process action does is it makes it mandatory for parties to begin to take action while we begin to do social reorientation, social education, to start promoting women leadership. So it's a step. It's not a silver bullet. It doesn't even answer the question of quality of representation. What it does is it opens up the space so that we can start having fair competition.
Thank you. Cynthia, thanks. Okay. I want to still ride on the issue of cultural practices and our current legislative experience. There is, and of course this is also very relevant to the Honorable Minister of Women Affairs, the Child Rights Act has been passed by the National Assembly. That's why it's an act now, signed into law. But we know that not all the 36 states of the Federation have domesticated this act so that it then becomes a state law. And all kinds of issues have been raised, including culture and, again, social practices. If we are having that experience, what tells us that, okay, when we now get into this affirmative action, with all the issues you raised about quota just becoming a question of fulfilling our righteousness, what guarantee is there that ultimately this will work?
Well, I think that is why I would strongly advise that we open our minds in having this gender conversation. Open our minds in the sense that we need to broaden our thoughts. There is a tendency to interpret. There's a tendency to interpret what you may call objective and not so favorable commentaries around gender issues as being opposed to it. In my opening remark, I did say that I am a champion already. I want this bill passed, okay? But I refer to the issue of quality, and I gave the data not to single out the woman gender, but to use that as a metric of also, supporting your points. Now, let me drill down on that data further. Yes, 3 of them did not have a single bill. There are at least 4 of them that had only 1 bill. One of them had 18 bills. So if I was going to make the point about gender, and gender, I would be happy to say, look at Honorable Nkiruka. She had 18 bills. These are the kind of quality representation we talk about. That's the point I'm making. It should not be misinterpreted to mean that any suggestion to interrogate quality of representation or quality of participation is seen or should be seen as antagonism. That point must be made. And you further highlight the need to the antecedents or the precedents, and you raised the issue of the child rights. I'd earlier raised the issue of the financial autonomy for state legislature. And let me add to that the issue of the gender policy, the affirmative action, 35%. It's not about the laws and the policies. It's about our attitude. It's about the context that you keep referring to. You mentioned a couple of them, the social-political context, the cultural context. Why do we not have 35% affirmation in the cabinet of President Muhammadu Buhari. That would be a great example, a great show of support for all of this advocacy if we had that in place. That's what I'm saying. These are some of the things I'm talking about. At the state levels, they could also support the advocacy, right? So we must broaden our thoughts and our minds and see that, look, this is a holistic thing. It is not a silver bullet. Yes, it's an advancement in the cause. You know, and let me say again that it is important that we allow more women into this space. But it's also important that we allow women with capacity, with capabilities, and we also address all of these issues. Why do we have some political parties who have said, look, don't even pay for nomination forms? And then we still don't have women or sufficient number of women coming forward. Why do we have only 10 women sponsored by the PDP in the 2019 elections for seats in the House of Representatives? It's even worse in the APC. They had 7 women throughout the country sponsored for seats in the House of Representatives. So at the political party level, at the cultural level, and just one example, in 22 years of the Fourth Republic, we've had only 1 woman come from Kano State in the House of Representatives. I do not have a name. In Lagos, the numbers are much more. What does that tell you? Context. So these are issues we must not, dismiss whilst we are having these conversations. Because these are all policy issues. They get into the policy mix. And using legislation to cure issues or to solve our problems, practice has shown that it does not always really solve our problems, like the example you just gave with the Child Rights Act. So while we push for this, let us not lose the moment, I insist, to see how we can address these issues. What are the tendencies? What are the issues that affect women representation and participation in the Northwest, in the Northeast? I will be very happy if we have a motion sponsored by all women, including the speaker, by 18 members, talking about Safe School Initiative and why girls should be allowed to go back to school in the Northeast, in the context of what is going on in the Northeast. That is gender sensitivity. That is gender inclusion. It does not have to be a constitutional amendment. It will be a motion, and it will tell a strong story. And our experience with constitutional amendments here is not something to really be gleeful about. And many of these bills have been passed, and many of them have been assented to. They are quick wins. They are quicker wins we can advert our minds to. I am not trying to derogate or to reduce from the importance of this bill. This bill is fantastic. Kudos to the sponsors, right? And I understand that a wide range of stakeholders, including the Honorable Minister sitting here, has made some advocacy before this bill came to the public domain. I am aware, because that is the terrain I operate in. And I know that there are several other fantastic pieces of legislation that are being proposed, including the one on indigenship for women. There's another one that talks about appointment for women. There should be at least 5 women in the cabinet, and for youth and all of that. There's another one that talks about state of origin thing. Women who are married, are they allowed to represent the state to where they are now married? There is a constitutional amendment. These are all fantastic. I am aware of all of these legislations. The question really is the context. Let us deploy sufficient amount of energy and use the excitement of the moment to try and address some of these issues. That's just my point.
See, I'm still very much concerned about how these women will emerge in terms of looking at the political mechanics and the structure of the country and the nature of political parties that we have. For instance, Dame, is it possible to say in a party, for instance, you have the APC, right? So APC will say, okay, as far as we are concerned, any woman that's interested in contesting for House of Reps or National or Senate should not pay for her nomination form. Is it possible? Or to reduce the amount of money for women to enable women emerge as those that have been nominated to run for different constituencies. Besides that, what about other political parties? Would they also do the same thing to ensure that women must emerge? Because I'm thinking of how they will emerge, since it's not an appointive position. It has to go for election, right? And this bill we're talking about, is it going to compel all political parties to have a policy specifically for women participation in elections? So I want to see how this will emerge. You have been in politics for a long time. So how will it happen?
Thank you very much, Kirian. The starting point is the political parties. And we are working on the party amendment of the Constitution. The party constitution is undergoing a process of amendment. And that is actually the starting point. Because look at all the political parties. Out of maybe 25 or 30 members of the National Working Committee, we have only one woman as the woman leader. What will one voice? The moment she wants to talk, they will all shout on her. And whatever she brings on the table, they kill it. So we are working on amending the party structure because that is the starting point. This bill is fantastic. It is another process of helping the process, which is happening everywhere. But the starting point is amending the constitution, the party constitution, to have more women in the National Working Committee. Because as Cynthia clearly mentioned, over 33,000 contested in the last election, but they were fiddled out during the primaries. We are not even interested in giving us free forms. No. You give us free forms and then you wheedle us out of the primaries. That is not the issue. Allow us by the form. We will contest, but let us have a fair playing ground.
What of the financial muscle?
The financial muscle is, you see, that's why we believe in the option A4, the open primaries. The delegate election is not democratic. Only those who can afford it. How do you expect maybe 30 people, delegates, or 50 delegates to represent a whole constituency? 30 people that will come and vote on behalf of 3,000 people. Is that democratic? No. And 2 days before the primaries, you can't even see the delegates. Somebody has picked them, locked them up in a hotel, and make sure that nobody has access to them. They pay them heavily to come and vote. Women don't have that kind of money.
So
how
do they get these seats?
They will get these seats if we amend the party constitution. If we have more women in the National Working Committee, during and when we have more women in the National Working Committee, the process of selling through the primaries is very important. If we have more women, those women will ensure that these women are not wriggled out. And once a woman sells through the primaries, she becomes the candidate of the party. Automatically, she will make it. But the moment you are wriggled out of the primaries, finish. And that is because we have poor representation at the party level. And we are working on it, not only APC, we are reaching out to all the other political parties, PDP and APC, they are the key dominant parties. And I believe with all that we are putting in place, there is hope that the party constitution will be amended. And once it is amended, we will be able to get more women sell through this thing. That is one option. The second option is what the bill proposed, where these seats are exclusively for women to contest among themselves. And that happens in all the countries, most of the African countries. Namibia, we have the zebra policy, which is 50-50. And it is from the party level. Once the party structure is amended and the party structure supports gender parity, we will sell through.
Should this be enshrined in our constitution?
Yes, in the party constitution.
Not party, I'm talking about the constitution of the nation.
Both,
because
yes.
you may not be able to compel all parties, to do this. Because in those countries you talked about, they may not have multiple political parties. They may not have, some of them, in South Africa, for instance, I think about 2 active parties, right?
Yes.
And
the same thing in Nigeria. The same thing in Nigeria. Virtually 2 active parties. The remaining parties will fill in and join one of the two.
Yeah, Honorable Minister,
Yes.
I know that there are two issues here, just as Kieran is trying to pursue. Two issues here is the process that we are seeking to achieve, or that the bill seeks to achieve, one that should be reduced into provisions in the 1999 Constitution as already amended, or it is one that should be a directive to political parties so that that then becomes a requirement for qualification to contest an election. That's one key point. I think we will return to that presently. But I just wanted us to also consider the moment and then also the future. Cynthia, I was wondering, now the bill seeks an enlargement of the number of seats in the legislature at a time that the country is complaining about the huge cost of governance. I'm wondering, I mean, you know that one of the major issues that we have faced over the past 2 decades has to do, say, at the National Assembly, just how much it's costing the country to continue to have 360 representatives and 109 senators. At some point, there was even a proposal that said, look, why don't you have a single chamber rather than 2 levels that we're having at the moment? In the meantime, the bill seeks to introduce 111 new members into the National Assembly. And of course, you're also going to have that at the state level. When we are pursuing issues of gender parity, we also must be concerned about the economics of it. The macroeconomic environment is very challenging right now. And even if we're to get out of it in the next couple of years, we have to be concerned about growth, sustainable growth, well above 3%, to outstrip our population growth rate so that we can have a much better life. Is it at this time that we'll be saying, look, okay, what we need now is 111 more seats, or we walk around the current size of the National Assembly and try to get your proportion of women representation from amongst that number? Cynthia.
Very important question. And honestly, in the whole conversation around this bill, this was one major question that kept coming up, the issue on cost of governance. And like you said, can't we work around the existing structure that we have? And being a student of history, we've seen that several assemblies, they've been attempts to work around the existing structure, but it has failed. So this is a proposal that for some reason there is more acceptance for it. So you see over 80 members in the House of Representatives, including the Speaker, sponsoring this bill and serving as co-sponsors of this bill. So we've tried different methods, previous assemblies, it has failed. This is getting the level of support that we need. That is one. The thing on cost of governance, I think the major challenge is citizens are frustrated with the quality. If we had better representation, we wouldn't be talking about the numbers in the House of Reps and in Senate. In 1979, we had 450 seats in the House of Representatives and 5 senators from each state, if you look at the 1979 Constitution. And then we had lesser number of states and lesser population. So if you even look at representation itself, as it is, the problem is not necessarily about the cost, it's the quality. Because if we're spending money the way we should spend it and accounting for every fund, and if we had quality representation, we wouldn't be having this conversation. So I think for me, the focus should be on what do we lose if we don't have women in government? And do we want to sacrifice the interest, or do we want to sacrifice the interest of half of the population and because of a challenge that they did not cause? Can we focus on value of value of money vis-a-vis the quality of representation? That way, I think we can then change the conversation, because this is one proposal that has seemed to have gotten the attention of the reps across geopolitical zones in the National Assembly. So maybe we begin this consideration at this point and then focus on demanding for quality representation, focus on accountability, because if we begin to account for funds, if we begin to have quality representation, honestly, Nigerians would not be talking about numbers. They would focus on the value for money and focus on the quality of representation.
Yeah, good. Quality of we're
going to take a short break now. But Cynthia,
let's not forget, Kisley, that sometime in this country we had the Speaker of the House of Reps. We had a Speaker of House of Reps, being a woman.
Yeah, Patricia
yes, and we know how that ended, right? So in terms of
she was ousted by her colleagues.
Exactly.
No,
because we're talking about quality representation.
Yeah, I understand the example you said, but don't also forget what Cynthia said of the risk of singling out one woman and then using her perhaps as a positive or not so positive example. But the issue she raises about, look, if we had quality representation, then there might be no issues with saying enlarging the seats. But that is a subjective assessment to say quality of representation. What would be the metrics for ascertaining quality of representation? What, therefore, if you were to back up and say our experience in 22 years, this has been the quality of representation. We have had in the National Assembly members, fighting their own political parties. If you recall, Kyrian, some of those years, and legislative work has sometimes been impeded. And so, I mean, the current National Assembly is still battling with the image issue around being the rubber stamp or otherwise. So these are the points that, of course, we'll come back to later on in the course of the conversation. We'll take a short break now. When we return, the program continues.
The counsel of our fathers.
I will urge and advise our younger generation to use talent and brain to sort out problems, not arms.
Nigerian youths, let's build our nation together.
He's falling sick so frequently, either fever or stomachache. I keep him away from junk food.
She also feeds me apples. She says an apple a day keeps...
If you want to keep germs away, then also wash your hands regularly with Dettol soap.
Meaning?
If it's a soap, why not Dettol soap? Germs and disease spread through the hand also. For this, use Dettol soap. Dettol protects from up to 100 illness-causing germs. Dettol soap is endorsed by the Nigerian Medical Association. Be Dettol sure.
These days, people get their news and information from more media sources than ever before. Some of the news and information given are fake, unverified, doctored, and manufactured to create confusion, stir disaffection, and cause disunity. Before you believe or share any news, ask yourself, is this real? Is it from a credible source? Is it verified or verifiable? Fake news is dangerous, whether you do it for fun or for political gains. Real people can get hurt. Fake news, don't create it, don't spread it.
This is a public service announcement from NTA.
Life can be very eventful. We curiously expect things to happen, even when we don't know what. Our human nature makes us like and repost lots of information. Some are unverified, inciting anger and hate. Sometimes innocently, other times the urge to break it first. This, in most cases, has caused destruction in many nations.
Sheffield United only have their pride to play for when Crystal Palace visit this Saturday. On the Premier League Live is Sheffield United versus Crystal Palace, showing on the network service of the NTA from 2:30 p.m. The Premier League Live is brought to you by Baba Ijebu in association with Gold.com.
All right, just still watching Good Morning Nigeria on the network service of the NTA. And of course, our topic is a very interesting one, and our guests here are doing justice to that. Okay, let's bring you in again. You've listened to Cynthia and Dame, and I want you to come in from perhaps speak to some of the points that they raised. Kingsley also asked a question that has to do with the issue of the number of representation at the National Assembly. If we're looking for extra 111, and we're talking about, high cost of running government, some other persons could say, look, that even if we're going to have extra 111 representatives at the National Assembly, women, how will they emerge? Are those women going to contest against themselves, or are they going to contest against men as to how they will emerge? I mean, what is the mechanics now? How possible is it if you are asked to be in charge of such a policy that, of course, will also have to be implemented?
My understanding is that the bill proposes that it is exclusive for women.
Yes.
So you don't even go there if you are a man. So it's not a question of women contesting against men. It's exclusive, to women. And that is the beauty of that. Another beauty I like to also highlight is the fact that it provides for an experimental period of 16 years. If we do this in 16 years, we can review. Is this working? Is it not working? Shut it down, upscale it, options. That's also good. There's a flip side that we're also not looking at, and I'm sorry to raise it, because of the issues around context I keep talking about. Why do we have the gender equal opportunities bill, the GAO bill, staying in the National Assembly for 8 years running, or thereabouts, going to 8 years? I understand that the bill, as beautiful as it is because the individuals see it as a threat to the issues of patriarchy and all of that, especially up north in the country. So that bill has consistently been rejected because of that. So how this is going to be differently received is my worry. Assuming it is, and this is the red flag I want to raise. Okay, you want this, we give it to you, that's fine. And then, whilst the bill says that women are also not disallowed from contesting for the other seats that's currently provided, it could be that, okay, look, should we have 110 seats? Can you we'll do everything to keep you away from the rest 469 seats. They can do it. These are the issues I'm talking about. It's deeply ingrained. We can railroad everyone to support this bill and pass it, and even get the president to give assent to the bill. Implementation. We haven't changed. We are all Nigerians, still the same Nigerians, ex-governors, governors who have refused to do some of these things like the child rights. They are in the Senate. They are all in the Senate. They're in the House of Representatives. People who have been this and that, So they could say, look, all right, we'll give it to you, but we would ensure that we keep you to 110 seats. Have we made any gains? We need to broaden our minds in thinking through this bill, and that's the point I keep making. We should not see some of these issues that are raised as opposition to the bill. And that's why I love this platform for this discussion. In case we haven't thought about this, this is a danger waiting to happen.
Another potential danger, some might say, is as follows. Kirian has drawn attention to the mechanics for realizing this goal. Now, I've just been thinking that, have we also thought about our electoral system? Our electoral system, okay, and Cynthia, is constituency-based. So, each state of the Federation has 3 senatorial districts. In a number of cases, North, Central, and South. And then in the House of Reps, you have federal constituencies that bunch up a number of local governments to form federal constituency. So you have the elections being contested on these platforms. Now, the proposal says that to realize 111, you will have 37 Senate seats. That's to say, 2 from each of the states of, that's 1 from each of the states of the Federation and the Federal Capital Territory. And then for the House of Reps, you would have 2 additional seats. So I'm just wondering, how are you then going to contest for 1 seat for women if you say, let's say, take your state, or let's each of us look at our state and say there's 1 seat for a woman? Will the woman come from the north, from the central, or from the south senatorial district? Or will it also be on the basis of rotation? One comes first, the other one comes later. You say that, no, I've done only 4 years. I want to do 2 terms. Let us see how it goes. If people also argue that democracy is a game of numbers, and you have, in some cases, majority population in some districts, they say, no, we're not going to vote for this person. And whom would that woman be? I'm sorry, I'm not saying that woman now. The woman who gets elected, will she then be, which district will she be represented? Will she not be representing the entire state or otherwise? I'm not quite clear as to how this might work out. Gentlemen, okay, and Cynthia, then Honorable Minister, I don't know whether you get the confusion that I'm trying to untangle. To say, in the federal elections, House of Reps, it is clear. If I'm from federal constituency, I will contest for that particular. It's not like contesting for a governorship election. A governorship election has the state as a single constituency. So is this what we're now going to have for, say, the senatorial election? For women, special seats for women, and then when it comes to House of Reps, it now becomes a case of 2 governorship, equivalent of 2 governorships that you are chasing. I don't know how that's going to work out. I don't know. Have you?
Very interesting, and I share your confusion, to be honest, because in the National Assembly, in the Senate, and in the House of Representatives, when you stand up to speak, you identify yourself and the constituency you represent. That's the first thing you say before you speak. So I am Mrs. Juliet, Ibrahim. I represent the federal constituency of what? I represent the senatorial district of what? I think we need some clarity there, because how do we get even INEC, that is currently, in a constituency rejigging process? How do we get them to deal with this? What are the administrative procedures? Have we properly thought about these things? Because representation is people-based. Representation is not based on any other criteria, but people. What people are you representing?
Exactly.
Am I representing just the females of Nkwano federal constituency, for instance?
And INEC has to really play a role here. Let's bring in Cynthia here on this very matter. Let us know how that can work.
Yeah, thank you so much. And yes, representation is people-based, and it's people-based within a geographical space. So for the Senate, the idea for the bill, reading the text of the bill, is the senator, actually the woman or the women that will become, because all parties will be fielding candidates, so it's not just going to be one. Different parties have different zoning pattern. So it also depends on what parties are adopting or what zoning pattern they are adopting within the state. So now for the Senate, the idea is that the women contesting for that seat would be contesting for within the state. So it's even a much more tough elections for them, because they are contesting and campaigning within the state. Now, because it's an additional seat in the Senate, they will be representing the state. So it will be Senator D's representing the good people of Kano State, for instance, because it's people-based within the geographical space. These state assemblies, because I'll go through the easier ones. State assemblies, the proposal is 3 for each state assembly, representing this. They will be elected from the senatorial district. So we have 3 senatorial districts in every state. So the state assembly will be having 3 additional seats from each senatorial district. Now, different parties will field women candidates for these seats in each of these 3 senatorial districts to contest to get into the office, to get into the state assemblies for those states. So, for instance, the amendment is also for states like Kano that had 40. Most likely they will have 43. That's an easier one. So that is how the competition will be done. For state assemblies, they are not contesting within a state constituency, but from the 3 senatorial districts. Now, where will we have a lot more technicalities, which the proposed bill has given INEC the power. If you look at the that amendment, is empowering INEC to divide the state into 2. For the House of Representatives, because ordinarily we have every state has federal constituencies, and the constituencies are divided in equal numbers, with one constituency not being, with no constituency moving outside one state. So every constituency within a state. Now INEC, by the proposed amendment, will divide the state into 2, and you have 2. The women, the parties would field candidates, female candidates, for these 2 seats across the state. divided into two. Now, that is left for INEC to do that division. Now, the idea for this, in thinking about it, it has its technicalities. However, if you look at it, where I feel there is a lot more conversation is at the House of Representatives, because that is where INEC needs to step in to divide that. But aside that, these women, the women that would be competing, will be representing their own people from their own state or senatorial district, depending on which of the elections. And they will be speaking at the chambers in these houses as representing the good people of these states that they come from. So different parties will feel, we don't know which party would win. Different parties would do their zoning, depending on which party would win.
So in the course of a general election,
yes.
In the general election, you're going to have like 2 separate ballot papers or something?
So,
because one will be on the let's say now on the common seats. That's to say anybody can contest, man or woman, common seat. Then the other one will be for special legislative seats, by which parties will be mandated to field nobody else but women.
Yes.
Or you are going to then have a separate election. I don't know.
No, the same election.
The same election period.
The same election.
Yes.
Parties will field for those candidates. In fact, it even gives the newer parties opportunities to even have representation. Because like we said, there's a dominance of APC and PDP. But we have much more parties. So it even gives other parties opportunities to field candidates, which most times they actually have a lot more women candidates to field. So it's the same election. They just have a different ballot. Senate, so you have that ballot paper. The same election, you vote for the candidates.
One of the kind of ambiguity in this. Yeah. Because now you have to carry Nigerians along in this. Mm-hmm. So you are not saying that the
she's not the one saying it.
The
proposed bill.
She's an advocate of the bill. Yeah. You know, now when you say, okay, the normal election, like in states where we have 3 central districts, there will be normal election. Then the other one, which is not normal, but we want to factor in, is that of the women. So if all the parties in a particular state, if all the parties field women for that very position, that it means that anybody that will be elected in that state will be representing the good people of that state. Mm-hmm. Okay? Sure. Not a constituency. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So all this just to provide for women. Is that not what we're trying to say? Yeah. So what kind of democracy is that going to be? Because I don't understand
for the Senate.
For the Senate. Mm-hmm. What about House of Reps?
Divided into 2.
Divided into 2.
Yes.
So the two women will emerge from each state or something?
Yes.
For House of Reps?
Yes.
To be able to get the number we're looking for?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Carry on, sorry. Assuming that we pass through this stage of the elections and they get into the assembly, National Assembly, there is this thing about representation of people, and it is not just a terminology. People bring to you petitions. You know, there is lawmaking, there is representation, and there is oversight, right? My issue is this representation. Everyone can propose a bill as long as you're in the parliament. Who do you represent? I represent the good people of the state. Yeah. But there is a representative who represents a portion of that state. Exactly. So when I stand to say I represent the good people of a state, and I am proposing this appropriation or constituency project for the good people of my state, and the gentleman from that constituency where that project I'm proposing is from, says to me, hey, look, how are we going to do this? So there is more issues around the practicability. I say this because I understand the complexities. I understand the difficulties in getting parliamentarians, members of the National Assembly, to work together with regards to appropriation, especially on this issue of constituency projects. Because I want to put projects in the budget. As contentious as that issue is, you also want to put, so you're representing the people of the state, and where are you placing your budget? That does not have an issue, a clash, or a conflict of interest.
So the practicability
is we may succeed with the election issue, but the practicability, and the parliamentarians know this.
If I understand what Dame did say earlier on in this conversation with respect to parties amending their constitution to accommodate women, right? Instead of having this other kind of a parallel election, representing the same people, you say a woman representing a state where you have other people representing the constituencies of that state, right? And if this can be built into party system, to say, look, all parties, as far as this election committee is concerned, women are given a certain number of positions. So field as many women as possible to ensure that we get this number. Is there a possibility?
It is. And we are working on that. And I believe that something will come out of it. Not just the APC, all the parties, because we are reaching out to all the other political parties. And the politics is a game of number. The more, the merrier. There's nothing wrong with having two people representing a certain constituency. There's nothing wrong. The more, the merrier. And the more representation, the more dividends of democracy that people will get out of it. And it is clear that where a woman is representing a constituency, the people in that constituency enjoy more benefits of dividends of democracy because she's a mother. She knows where it pinches. She reaches out and addresses the problems that affects the lives of the people in that constituency. So, you see, all these things are internal arrangements that can be easily made. We are politicians, we know how it works. When you talk about poor representation of women in the North-West, things are beginning to change. Kaduna State is part of North-West. But because we have a gender-sensitive governor, he made it happen. We have a good number of women in appointive positions. We have a deputy governor. And now with the he for she, it's all about lobby. We are reaching out to the governors. We are making friends with them. And most of the governors are seeing reality. I want to tell you that this coming election, Northwest will surprise you.
Good. I was just wondering, instead of these absolute numbers given here and then ballooning the cost of governance, suppose this were then made a task of political parties by way of legislation to say that for all elections that you'll be feeding candidates, let's say in a general election, 25% minimum, that's 1/4, that's starting with 1/4 of your candidates must be women.
Yeah.
Suppose we did that, so that we monitor and see how it goes. Because if you then field a candidate, and to the extent that that candidate represents your party, you are obligated to campaign vigorously for that candidate and ensure that the candidate wins. You just say 25%, so that not all this number of saying you want to go and bring 111, you want to go and bring 3 to each candidate, to each state, so that when you are doing 2/3, it becomes a very clumsy arithmetic to work out when you want to get 2/3 votes or 4/5 votes in a particular legislature. Cynthia, what do you think?
Yes, in fact, that had been initial proposals in previous assemblies, asking for 35% representation. So even...
I'm saying 25 now.
Yeah, you're saying 25,
No.
but our 25 is low. It's 35%.
25%.
We're not going lower than
okay.
that. Yes, so let's just keep it at that. We're even asking for parity, but let's continue. So there's been proposals in previous assemblies, but these have failed. Actually, in the ongoing electoral reform, there was also a proposed amendment to Section 31 of the Electoral Act to mandate parties in their candidate list to have a percentage of women. But the political parties have kicked against that. The lawmakers kicked against that. Why? Because they feel that we've seen that attempts to do this have been kicked against by parties and they failed. This is the only proposal that so far has received this kind of recognition when it comes to representation in the legislative arm of government. Also, because we practice first past the post, that's the winner takes all system as against proportional representation, it also becomes a bit difficult when you talk about candidate list. So one of the things we've also seen that countries that focused on voluntary party quotas had proportional representation or a mix, which was why Uwe's committee asked for a mix of both first past the post and proportional representation, so that we can also use that to increase representation of women. So there's a lot of that was kicked against severally.
All right, Cynthia, thank you so much. Well, I'm happy that many members of House of Representatives are supporting the bill. So let's see how it plays out. Time shall tell. And at this point, we would like to appreciate all of you for being here this morning. Honorable Minister of Women Affairs, Dame Pauline Tarling, thank you indeed, as always. We appreciate your contribution. And, of course, the Executive Director, Order Paper Nigeria, okay, up here. It's also been a pleasure talking to you this morning. Thank you. And the Programs Director of IAGA Africa, Cynthia Mbamalo. It's been wonderful talking to you this morning.
Thank you.
All right.
Okay, so that's it for us on Good Morning Nigeria. As always, we appreciate your being with us. The program returns tomorrow, same time, 7 o'clock in the morning. I'm Kingsley Osadola. Do enjoy the rest of your day.
And I'm Kirian Umayo. We thank you for watching.